Okay, welcome everybody to the July 24th Rules and Policies Committee meeting. Calling this meeting to order. Roll call. John Anderson.
Here.
Karen Shoup.
Here.
And I'm here, Don Hamill as chair. We're going to begin by approving the minutes from March 14th, and a quick note of apology. You know, we had traditionally had not really a standing meeting, and we haven't met for various reasons since March. So time flies when you're having fun, but we're back on track. And if I could ask for, if everyone's had a chance to read the minutes, someone could please make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, it's approved unanimously. To make up for the long delay in between meetings, it should be a relatively short meeting and agenda this evening. As part of our approval of the minutes, we actually are passing some language changes. So I thought we'd take a minute to review those and recap for everybody. And John or Karen, if you want, I know a couple of them are Karen's. Thanks.
This isn't on our agenda though. Is this?
It's what we had passed last
No.
time. So
Weird.
What was, it's the little verbiage on the very end. This is the one that you passed it the last time, but you wanted me to supply you with other information that had been approved prior.
Yeah, I think my question for the ones that we had moved is what is the timing through which these are gonna make it on the council agenda, since we've already moved, I think in the minutes, we moved 2 items forward. So the one to put in kind of the term limits and the one to change the planning board liaison or add a planning board liaison to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
So I think since those were approved, you know, maybe this is something, Cody, for staff to work with council leadership to figure out what makes sense.
well, what I had hoped process-wise that we could approve the third if they could all three go together as a package. I don't envision that going to ordinance first. They're fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
But that we would have someone help us with wording so it can be done in a single action, or at least in a single meeting with 3 separate actions. So enough in a discussion about that. Or
So on the one that has, starting January 1st, 2024, we might want to change that date.
Yep. okay,
It's on the, it's on
Great.
the handout, but I,
spread well.
right here, this one.
It's the one with the. Okay, so can I ask for a motion to revise the wording to reflect the way it's written on this page? It's under chapter 302A, Town of Scarborough, Town Committees, Boards and Manual, Article 1, Procedures, and it's the second paragraph on appointment and reappointment to committees, which is the domain of the Appointments and Negotiations Committee. So if someone could maybe read that into the record in terms of what we'd like to move forward, I would appreciate someone offering that.
Sure. Do you want me to make a motion first or read it?
Why don't you do both?
Okay.
Does
So I
someone
make a motion
motion?
to add, yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to add the following language to chapter 302A, Article 1. Under appointment and reappointments. And that is starting in January 1st, 2024, committee/board members shall serve no more than 3 consecutive full terms of office. And until your vacancy is filled on all committees with 1 year off before they can apply to the same committee/board.
So
Second.
any further discussion? So if,
The date's already gone by, so
so that we would be looking for a revision, would that be January 1,
2025.
2025, or date set certain sooner if it gets approved.
I think when we discussed this, the reason we had picked January 1, 2024 was because we were in the process of renewing.
Right.
Yeah,
So I don't know if that would make a difference to. keep
can we
it
do something
2025.
retroactively? Is it possible?
Um,
For us? Probably not,
I
huh?
don't think I'd want
Yeah.
to.
I mean, I would hope and I would recommend that we could do January 1st, 2025. And then
Well, yeah.
by the time we do all the appointments,
Well, most of the terms expire, unless they're a partial term, most of them expire at the end of the calendar year, right? Or
Correct. Yeah.
begin at the beginning of the calendar year. So I think there would only be a couple of exceptions when job change or something intervenes or someone has to resign. So, is that the motion then? Can you restate it, please?
so are we amending?
Yeah,
Yeah, you'll amend it.
So motion to amend the January 1st, 2024 to January 1st, 2025.
second,
Okay, further discussion? So can I ask for a vote by hand of who recommends or who is supporting that this would be effective at the beginning of the next calendar year? All those in favor? So that's unanimous. One down, two to go. The second one was related to Conservation Commission. And it was under the organization and membership. It reads as follows: a representative from the town council and a representative from the planning board shall serve as a liaison and are non-voting members. Do I have any questions about any discussion on that recommendation?
I think the vote from last time still stands that
Mhm.
this just needs to be packaged. Like you said, with the one we just changed, this and the one we're gonna vote on later.
Great, so do I have a recommendation to approve this?
So I will motion to add the following language to the Conservation Commission's main board verbiage, I don't know what it is. To say a representative from the town council and a representative from the planning board shall serve as liaison and are non-board members.
Do I have a
A
second?
second.
Okay, any further discussion? So I'd like to ask for showing of hands, of those in favor? Opposed? So that's approved unanimously. So those two can go, forward. And then the last one, which is new, refers to chapter 302A, Town of Scarborough Town Committees and Boards Manual, Article 1 Procedures. That's under paragraph 4, broadcasting of board and committee meetings. This basically is a way to kind of codify what's already in practice and in place for most other boards and committees. There were only a couple that haven't been broadcast. I think they're notably, the Shellfish Commission and also the Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee were the two that I can think of that were traditionally not recorded. So
Right, and the Parks and Conservation Land Board
there we
too.
go. So
They've started, but
so can I have a recommendation for the wording for this change?
so I motion to change under chapter 302A, article 1, broadcasting of boards and committee meetings, to change the language to all meetings of any board and or committees appointed by the town council, whenever possible, shall be broadcast live and recorded for rebroadcast at a later date.
And can I ask for a second?
Second,
Any further discussion?
when we say whenever possible, that just kind of like sticks out to me of like. You should always be recorded, and again, if there's ever an issue where like. It can't get recorded. Because of technology or whatever, I could see how that's an issue, but I would want to be clear that. The expectation is. And the assumption is everything will be recorded and posted and. I don't know, whenever
So-
possible feels like. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
No, because I could see a scenario where maybe a board is like, oh, well, we can't meet because we can't record, and that's also not a
Yeah.
situation that I want either, where people aren't meeting and being productive because technology isn't working.
I think it leaves the possibility to account for technical difficulties or unforeseen circumstances where a group is met and want to still get it recorded. you know, on record or,
Mhm.
the results to be implemented. And wouldn't have to go back and have another meeting just to record it.
Yeah,
I think if you took that out, that might require you to do that.
okay. That's fine. Yes, convince me.
I mean,
just-
I personally don't think you
look
need
at
it. I think it's, you need to record it, but if you can't, just like certain things happen under the ordinance, if you can't do it, doesn't mean we're not gonna not do it, but.
Yeah.
I-
Okay, I'm fine with it as is.
Can I ask for a motion?
You have one.
Okay, can I ask for, a vote by showing of hands?
On favor.
Opposed? That's unanimous. So this will go sort of, the next item after those first two that we did. And I think that we're caught up in terms of what was in the queue for us.
So you had asked me to write, print off what discussion items that we had from the March meeting.
Yes.
Which had been on the agenda, so I did, make the list. And I believe staff was supposed to, sorry, Jonathan. It's not helping.
Oh,
So if I recall correctly, we had talked about these, or these were supposed to be, potential discussion items for
Yes.
this meeting.
No, they
were-
were going to be, they were in the queue. They were
Right.
on, they were discussed at the last meeting and I had gone back and listened and.
They didn't make the
up
cut.
with- Right.
right.
So,
I believe there was some other information that Liam was gonna be working
I
on
see.
to bring forward some items.
but I don't see any that are ready for prime time, but maybe we could breeze through this, to refresh your memory. I went back and watched the film as well. And there wasn't anything that stuck in my mind as really meaty, but there's more work to be done potentially, but I don't know if there's any of these that you'd like to see in the next, in terms of next agenda items, but
So the one thing I would like us to get closure on, I don't know if it's the first bullet, but it was in the minutes. Was the action for staff to. It's under item 4 in our meeting minutes, it's the second dark bullet around the process on public comments at town council meetings. So this was a result of the
Yes.
feedback we got from legal.
Yeah.
So I would like to see that come to closure.
Okay.
Where if we need to amend 202, and again, I don't think they were substantial amendments, we just needed to clarify a few things, and so. I would hopefully like to see us. Before this council ends, since
Right.
it started with this council, bring that particular item to closure before. The end of
Okay.
council.
I remember, so that also included a long memo
Mhm.
from MMA, which I thought was really helpful, pretty
Yeah.
detailed, but it went into issues like the distinction between disruptive and offensive
Right.
comments. And so I agree with you. I think that's worth another pass to try to see if there's something there we want to move forward.
Yeah.
So that's something you'd like to see on the next agenda item.
Or whenever staff
Okay,
has the recommendation.
Right.
And ideally have it before this council expires, to
Okay.
make sure we get some closure on that and we can get to council.
so request for staff recommendations on the public comment refinements. Process and public comments. Okay. How about the other bullets there?
So number 3. And on the discussion items,
I can speak to that.
well, I thought that was that more about. Counselors attending?
Yes,
Because when I looked at our rules and policies again.
Yeah.
And this was more recent, I thought of this one, I think. It said essentially every counselor is able to join any committee meeting.
yes,
So in my mind. We've already codified that if you want to attend the executive session as a counselor, there's no debate, you're allowed to, what you can't do is vote.
right.
So that's the only difference.
You have a right to attend but not participate. in
Yeah.
voting.
Right.
Well, we're not supposed to be voting in executive session, but you can.
Yeah.
You participate in the deliberations.
Yeah, so my interpretation is by our current rules, any counselor can participate in any committee meeting or any executive session
Right.
related to the committee. meeting.
Yeah. That's what I,
Okay, I thought we had pretty good agreement on that. It was a feeling that we didn't really need to write something up to take a position on it.
Mhm.
How about the 2 full voting members of the Long Range Planning Committee? I remember that was one that I thought went back to, actually, John, I recall it was you, I think, and Betsy Gleistein that unless I was dreaming, but I thought that you guys had a point of view on that. Where you
So we
wanted a
had-
member from, 2 members from the, outside the development committee, a community, to be participants on the long range, to be members of the Long Range Planning Committee.
So right now, my understanding is that none of the sitting members are. Depending on how you define the development community, part of the development community. But again, I think if there's a desire to relook at that charge. And I think in some of our charges, sometimes we're specific in what we want. So like if we wanted to clarify and say we would like two full voting members. That are not. Associated with the development community, but define what development community means. Then that's something we could take out if people wanted to have that discussion.
That would mean they wouldn't work for a builder or developer or on a Seco or whatever.
Yeah,
And I think there was a feeling that there were a lot of members that are on the committee now that have those backgrounds, that was a need to get a view from the public, and there was a hope that it would represent potentially, opposite views, pro and against in terms of development.
mhm,
But that's a tough thing to pin down.
yeah,
So that's something you want to take another shot at, or
I don't think it's a priority.
I think just the structure of long range planning right now doesn't make it urgent.
Yeah.
We have an opening right now, and I think if you're mindful of, and I feel like. I mean, you did appointments longer than I have. I think when you're looking at a committee and you're looking to reappoint, generally counselors look at who's on it and what would be a good.
I think we have a really good applicant for that committee.
Oh,
Okay.
do we?
Really good.
Good. Then we should meet next month.
Yeah.
so we can trust then that this would be the domain of the, of the appointments committee, and they
Appointments.
would do
I think
like that. Disbanding senior advisory board, I don't really know how that went out.
Yeah, so I mean, because I'm on with the Community Services Rec Advisory Board, we've talked about them kind of eating that up. I feel like we need to maybe go back to the community services charge and maybe create a senior position, like a standing position. I do think that is something, if we are gonna disband the Senior Advisory Board, that we should do. Is make like a designated senior position on the Community Services Board. To at least say, yes, we disbanded the Senior Advisory Board, but you're now part of this board and you have your own seat. I mean, currently the Community Services Board already has, I would say, a couple seniors on it.
So
But-
who-
So what, are they just not meeting? Is
No.
that the problem?
No, and I think the other factor is Todd has a very active senior group.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's more beneficial for him and the feedback he gets there. So no one wants to commit to a board. I think,
Yeah.
so he's got his little committees and
Yeah.
his seniors that he sees all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be tweaked out a little more.
I seem to remember that was an issue when I first started doing committee stuff, that we had folks that just had never appeared, were just missing for a year.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think people will show up to a senior event and talk all day, but if you're like, come to our recorded meeting at 5 o'clock with our agenda, they're kind of like, maybe not.
yeah. To your point, maybe he needs more focus groups and he gets that more from the participants in his programming, that he doesn't necessarily need a board at this point. So if that's his recommendation, if he thinks strongly that that's his position, I would like him
They do a
to.
really good job with senior involvement,
Yeah,
Yeah,
whereas years ago, they really,
there was nothing,
yeah,
and now the programs are really come.
right?
so the only thing I'd say is that I remember trying this a couple of times, where I thought, well, this committee's never met, let's get rid of them. So there was one, there was radio and TV committee, and there was another one that they never met. I said,
Right.
why don't we just cancel? And the folks said, no, we don't want to.
Just don't want it.
The cable TV, they had, when I first started years ago, they did like, Friday forums, and they did little TV, had somebody come in and speak, senator, or rep from the house or something like that. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Times change,
well,
Yeah.
Right,
things change.
I mean, I would say if Todd. What I would like is maybe Todd to give us his opinion.
Yeah.
On what he wants to do, and I like Karen, your suggestion of if it does get disbanded, we. Make a permanent seat on the rec advisory board to make
Right.
sure that that demographic is represented.
Mhm.
Because my understanding was, it started because seniors felt like they weren't getting support and attention.
Yeah.
And I feel like, at least from the community survey that was done that they did and as part of the Parks and Recs, our senior programming is like a lot. It's actually the adult programming that I felt like we don't have enough for
Yeah.
or much on. But seniors and children, like the two ends of the spectrum seem to get a lot of the support. It's really,
So do you want to make an affirmative action, take affirmative steps to get, to get rid of something, or is it, we'll just let it?
My recommendation would be
Nutrition.
for me to go back to the Community Services Rec Advisory Board, maybe have one more conversation with that board, say, this is what we're thinking, get them to say, yep, sounds great, have Todd say, yep, that's great.
Yeah.
And then we can just say, we did that, we had the discussion, and then we can have a name for whatever Todd's little group is now.
Because it's always one or two people that really drive the bus, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You need a couple of dedicated people and the rest of us follow, so. If there were one or two folks you could find out of that group, or just two others in general, to go to the community services group, that would be a benefit. So any action there, or anybody want to take that on, or we're just gonna,
No, I mean, I'll
Is it-
follow up with that
okay,
as the liaison.
So you want that as the agenda for next meeting?
yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
And if we can I'll get something from Todd or.
Do you also want the, no, never mind.
The final one, though, I think is worthwhile visiting, we're still, what is it, 3 minutes we have now for public comments?
What do other towns have?
Huh?
What do other towns have?
They have no more than, a lot of communities that I email the clerks group and they only do like 3 minutes, maybe 4, but the majority of. them are
Gorham's 3 minutes,
Okay,
it's the same,
is that,
And we also, it was the first half hour after our meeting starts, we have open for public comment.
Yeah.
And
So-
once the half hour is,
we didn't used to have that, right? Was there always an open public comment one
Yeah,
after the
we've
ones
always
were-
had
yeah.
public comments, but again, I'm dating myself, it would be a number of people,
Yeah.
and you'd be later in the evening
Oh.
getting your work done. So I believe they capped it at 30 minutes for the first half hour for public comments. And of course, if people, longer want to speak, we can go ahead with business, but
I have a bias in favor of, 5 minutes, or but I do go to 15, like the founders thought, but that was back in the day that things move slowly, so.
yeah, I
15
mean,
minutes,
my personal recommendation to people is if you're up there for more than 3 minutes, this is more, you need to be reaching out to us individually. You need to be emailing us if you have something substantial that, like, I feel awful about the Beach Ridge Motor Speedway, but like, you should have been emailing us. You should be, I hate that but that's such a big issue. If it's such a big issue and they need more than 3 minutes, I don't think public comment is the right place for it, is my personal opinion. That is, I need to email the
Yeah.
whole council. I have a bigger issue.
The trouble is, the
Um,
only option available to them is, is legal action, so, everyone knows the problems with that, so.
well, I think to go to Karen's point, I think we have to break this perception that your only moment for the council is at public comment,
You're right,
that, I've talked more with Denise, the host for public comment, because of her public comment.
Yeah.
But she probably, like, I'm not saying she used more than 3 minutes, I don't think she did, I think she said what she had to say in 3 minutes, but for other people who maybe really want to have a conversation, picking up the phone and calling us or requesting during their public comment that they would like follow up, and I appreciated how she, in that example, wrote us afterwards and said, I spoke, now I want a response.
Right,
Which
and
I
I
think
also
is
think, I mean, we have liaisons. I'm the liaison to planning board. The Bailey's people reached out to me instead of showing up to a meeting and complaining for half an hour.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's another way to say, your issue is involving this subject. Maybe talk to that liaison. talk
and you
to
know
that
how to
person,
channel it, right?
and things like that. Because again, I hate to keep talking about Denise Hamilton, but I feel awful, but that's where they're at. I feel like they've been like coming and just getting nowhere, where I'm like, I feel like maybe if they had done something a little bit differently, they wouldn't be so frustrated.
I think that's what's hard, is like, they don't know what they don't know, like, even when I spoke with Denise, I said, I'm one of the long range reps, so if you feel like you're trying to get something through and it's not, I'm the liaison, so I can be a doorway. And I'm probably a more effective doorway because I know what needs to happen to get things moving, and so, yeah, I think that's something. I think some of this might tie into the comms committee,
Yeah,
where maybe I can bring the concept of increasing time for public comment, 'cause to me, it is kind of a communications engagement thing. But see if we want to have a bigger conversation on engagement. One of the things that, based on my conversation with Denise as well, but I thought was just an interesting concept that I just kind of pressed my mind, that I sent Tody and the comms committee a note was, public notice is required to go in the paper and it's required to be mailed in certain situations. But why aren't we posting on Facebook when we're having public hearings? Why aren't we putting a section in the town newsletter that says upcoming public hearings? So that way it's just another way
Yeah.
to notify people. And
One's required, right? One's you have to do it in order to get,
Yeah,
Yeah,
some stuff
yeah.
legally required, but
Right,
we're
so-
saying maybe we should go a
But-
little beyond.
But to Karen's point, like you can always footnote, if you would like more than 3 minutes, we encourage you to call or email, like you don't have to come only to the public hearing and get your 3 minutes. You can get your 3 minutes at the public hearing, but if you want a more substantial conversation.
Yeah.
Call a counselor, call a liaison, and like try and tell people that, hey, there's more ways to be heard than just your 3 minutes.
but my question on this one is, how did that end up, as the only option, the Superior Court to Cumberland County? How did we decide to do it the way we did it?
For
rather
3
than-
minutes or for.
No, rather than a contract zone application, you're trying to change permitted use of an RF zone to light industrial zone. Why would you, why would all of a sudden you not have, access to that process? How do you decide between just, just revising the ordinances, versus creating a process where you have the opportunity to extract concessions from the applicant?
You're talking, so
So, I mean, I use it as an example, Piper Shores Phase 2, the Meadows, that was a contract zone amendment. But it went through an extensive process where the council were the deciders, not the planning board.
Right.
The recommenders. And there were significant concessions that were extracted from them in terms of paths and safety and crosswalks and money, $500,000 for affordable housing, so.
my understanding of the situation that we're in right now is that. When the town did its 2010 comprehensive plan, part of that action plan was implementing all of the zoning changes.
Yeah.
And so creating the LI district from the B2, B3 was part of that went through a robust.
Right.
Public process, including the CPIC, which is like a really good best practice that I wish we would deploy for other big changes where they really did a lot of significant engagement. And I think, unfortunately, the current situation is what is happening there is a qualified use that was allowed by the changes in the zoning. But again, I don't think everybody fully contemplated the specific example, and my understanding now is that, and Tom mentioned this right before this meeting, that the planning board is really putting the applicant through its paces and pushing
Yes.
for more than they would typically do because of the discord, and the impact, and it seems like they're making progress. So I think it is working. It's just, in retrospect, if it wasn't a qualified use and they wanted to go in there and it was a contract zone, then yeah, it would come to council, but technically it's a qualified use. And so that is where the planning board.
The site plan process, there's no, it's always like make these changes or you don't get approved. How many times do site plans not get approved?
No, I mean, I
Right.
am the liaison and I watched the meetings. You were at the
Yeah.
last meeting. I will tell you, I mean, they are not required to do a traffic movement plan right now, but they are trying everything under the sun to try to get them to do one because we're
The counts are
questioning.
low. The
We're
counts are-
questioning, I question everything that they've come forward with, but that's not what we're here for today, but like, I do feel like I've seen the planning board push back really hard. I know some of the members have a lot of concerns. I know one of the members lives very close to there. So, I think they're doing a good job at pulling them to it. I think they are very well aware of the impact that that's gonna have on that whole area.
And staff is very concerned about the traffic or the impact of the roadways and they're trying to push, but again, that's. Again, I think a function of, we had an ordinance that had a qualified use and. It's, you don't really think probably a lot enough in this situation, what the problems could be. When something real comes and now it's something real and now it's being put through its paces and.
Yeah.
In retrospect, maybe it shouldn't have been a qualified use, but. That's what it is.
So that's a bit of a run around the block. Where does that leave us? On this one?
For the public comment, I think
Yeah.
what I would suggest is, let me bring that. To the communications committee and ask that we include that as part
Okay,
of our general conversation around. public engagement, public hearings, public comment.
Okay.
And see if we can come forward with either a recommendation to change the time or, to Karen's point, figure out how we communicate better, more broadly, how to engage us where this is one option. But if you want to go beyond 3 minutes, there's other ways to do it, but also how can we better communicate? Some of it may be like communicating our liaison roles a little bit more and like what that means and.
So that looks to me like one big one on public comments, right, is the first and last bullet on that list.
The first one, I think, was more about free speech and all of the changes, and I
Yeah.
think when we get the recommendation from staff.
Yeah.
I can bring forward what was discussed in communications committee to see if we want to amend 202, because that is where the public comment piece is, so again, that we get some, my thought is staff provides us something overarching based on the feedback we got from the lawyers.
Right.
And at that moment, based on the feedback I provide at that meeting, based on the comms committee, we can make further adjustments, or if anybody really strongly wants the motion to amend, we can have that discussion
Okay.
and amend the 3 minutes to something else.
Okay,
I like that.
The only thing not on here, Don, that I know you sent us an email on that we've been going back and forth on over email is it would be nice. To. Ask staff if they can, review the material that the school board and I had provided
Yes.
about naming. and
Yes.
See if staff has a recommendation on what they would propose we do in terms of establishing a policy to name facilities.
yes. So, and I owe an apology to Freela Tarpinian, who reached out to me at first, like in March or something. I mean, it was months ago. And we were right in the middle of the budget season and so forth, and I said, I just didn't see this was gonna make the cut. But we're back at it now, and I think that we do owe them a process and attention to look at that. I don't have any problem with them looking at it and coming forward with it broadly, but I would like to see it not just be pertaining to school facilities, but just a policy in terms of naming facilities, or dedicating or making memorials in general. So, and I think they had some good examples in the packet. I've sent everyone a link. You can have a look at that, but that's definitely worth more work. And I would just want to make sure that it's not only a school driven
Mhm.
Right.
effort.
So I don't know, Tootie, who would we need to ask to kind of take that research and turn it into a recommendation that we could then,
You would send it, did you send me the link?
I think, let's see, I don't think I did, but I will.
Autumn?
Yeah, that's
And then
great.
Tom would probably want to.
So on Tom, and Freela, and then I'd also say,
Todd probably, because a
I was
lot
gonna
of,
say Todd was
You-
another one.
yeah, and then there was one other person I was thinking about, it might be involved in this. So it's not just schools. At the gate, sports,
Oh, Mike Legage?
yeah. He had found some
Mhm.
really nice, single page, policies one from Auburn, I think, and another one from someplace in the south.
I
He
think,
did a lot of work on it.
I'm wondering if I'm just up to your plate, Karen, but. Since a lot of this is related to naming of facilities that are mostly parks and recs versus school sports facilities. Does it make sense that we ask staff to work with the rec advisory board to help come up with a policy, or would you prefer to keep it?
I think that's above their
Okay,
pay grade.
that's fine.
I think there's a risk with the scope
Inclination.
being too broad, but,
I think that would be above the stuff that they
Yeah.
address and deal with. Personally,
but there's work to be done there. The only thing I'd say is that this did start originally as schools, naming facilities, buildings and fields and so forth. I think it went back to the resolution that we did for the softball coach. When John Pucci was chair. So I just, want to make sure that we're being broad enough, so it's not just going to be exclusively schools. And that's not, I thought it was pretty noteworthy that they went from school naming facility to facilities name, effort,
Mhm.
not just schools.
So
So,
I think they're a big thing. I think my conversation with Fredo was more like. technically the town owns the facilities,
Yeah.
and so.
Yeah.
Like. If they could, they would probably come up with their own policy,
Yeah.
but they're acknowledging that they don't. Own the facility,
Yeah.
but they're getting requests from like. Former. Coaches or
Yeah.
things, to name it after somebody, and so. How do they get it formally in a
Right,
application to be evaluated,
We have
decided?
like a fee chart, if you pay this much money,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
we'll name a community center after you,
Yeah.
and.
Well, I mean, honestly, like,
So. Part of this is if they are looking for donations and things like that, they can't make any promises about naming facilities at this point.
Yeah.
Anything.
mhm,
Where I know, especially with the community center, a lot of the conversation was about, maybe we could get donations to, like, this could be someone's room, and this gym could be someone's gym, and to try to get donations and things like that, so
mhm.
even more, we're gonna need something like that for community center,
Yeah.
probably, because that's what we're like, how can we make money? How do we get donations?
Yeah.
Like, name every room after somebody.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, that's also something that would be very helpful to have a policy on.
when I think that kind of applies to a school, like, but
Exactly.
while I would say. I think if it's like. I was telling down at the beginning, if we're calling, we wanna name the skate park. Karen Shoup Skate Park.
Yeah.
That's a different thing, but if you're in the school and you wanna change the name of the gymnasium from.
Yeah.
This gymnasium to Karen Shoup Gymnasium, like. Is that something we need to see, or is that something that the school handles? Again, this is where it's,
That's the question.
yeah, so I think this grows legs. So it's probably important to be
Yep.
clear on like, what is the scope of a facility that this policy would govern, and. Again, I think that Augusta one that you shared was like, to me. The most straightforward, simplest one, and so I would advocate something like that, that's pretty. Simple,
So I've given, all of you, editor rights, to the folder with all the facilities name and stuff, so, anyone else who want to add this?
did you add Tom in one?
Yeah, Todd.
I'd even throw Lynn in there.
Probably.
Something. What's that? It's a good start.
yeah, like, I feel like Auburn's is like a really great.
Mhm.
Simple one to start
That's,
from.
yeah, master brevity there. So any other comments? About discussion items
No,
and go forward things. Here's one for you. What about going back to a standing meeting instead of scurrying around in a wild ad hoc fashion that never really seems to work, it makes everyone crazy. And I have to admit, the slot that we had was not too good. It was in the middle of like 3 or 4 other meetings in a row, so I don't know how you guys do that, many in a row.
I would
It's
like,
Thursday.
if we can have a break in August, but then maybe commit to do.
Yeah.
September, October, to close out the
Yeah.
open actions, and
Great.
then by October, if we're moving things to council.
Right.
Then it's before the council ends, so we can get everything done.
But hold the same slot, or you want to pick another one? That was the
Does
one.
this time work for you, since you have the conservation commission right
it's
after?
fine.
I can commit to doing, what is this,
Is it second Thursday of the,
This is
The
the fourth Wednesday.
We usually have it on the. We used to have it, just between, but I think this year we moved it to just before the finance committee. Isn't that one we had the last one?
we had the last one before the finance committee, which I could do that too.
3 to 4 or 4 to 5, something
I
like
can do
that?
it at 45.
Yeah,
Wednesday is the second.
which Thursday?
Second Thursday.
Second Thursday? So you want to just go back to that? I don't mind, it's a heavier load.
Starting in
you guys.
September?
Yeah,
Yeah, we could do it starting in
yeah.
September.
we should tell people that we're taking a break, we're not just kind of forgetting about it,
Yeah,
so. This is more action than.
We're not taking a break. We're working hard on materials and we just need some more time.
I think it
Okay.
does
We
get
didn't
that.
just forget.
No. We're working very hard on this list. Okay,
Diligently.
Well, if we meet the second Tuesday, or sorry, second
Thursday.
Thursday in September, I would hope staff to come forward with the adjustments to 202.
Mhm.
And I think
Hmm.
if they can come forward with
Mhm.
something on the naming, that's great, but I feel like that could wait till October.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to give staff more time, because I know there's a lot of other things staff is working on.
So Tony, can you help us by getting that back on the town
Yes.
calendar?
Yes.
Thanks, that'll be a
And
reminder.
if you want those items that you discussed earlier in the meeting, the red line, I can draw something up and put it on the next agenda in, starting in August.
Do you think we need it in August, or do you think you could, because I got the sense that August is gonna be a pretty packed agenda, which is why we're doing a workshop on the 7th, so if
2
it,
pages right now.
2 pages, is I mean a lot.
Well, we've got it looks like a lot, but it's we have 6 public hearings, but those are being carried over from the last meeting.
Hmm.
So, and then right now we have, there's no old business. And there are 3 items under new business.
Okay.
But I
Not
think,
so bad so far, but
Not
it's
so
a long road, that's still
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine deferring to the chair and vice chair, whether to put these on the 21st.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
September, okay?
Yeah.
None of them seem like they're urgent, that need to go
Right.
right away, so I'm fine letting them,
Yeah.
so you'll take a first reading, public hearing, and second reading.
Yeah.
Those are considered ordinance.
yeah. So I'm fine just deferring to them to figure out when it gets on the agenda.
I'll definitely draft something up so you can
Thank
see
you.
it ahead of time.
Yeah, what I found is if you're not in a regular cadence, the work getting back on track is almost as much as just staying with the regular meeting. You know what I mean? It just,
Well, looking at the minutes, I was like,
where was I?
yeah,
So, any further discussion on this then? I think we've just drawn a line on, what's ahead, and is there any, doesn't look like there's anybody online,
Mhm.
thankfully, and, with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second?
All those in favor?